once again, 30% of your grade is on the homeworks, which everybody should get 100% on by the time the semester's over. 30% is final project. Again, not too intimidating. We're going to be asking you to take one of the databases that we're going to provide you. Some of them are large databases, some of them are small ones, some of them are interesting, some of them are not so interesting. There's one on influenza. Maybe I can find some data from the city on measles that we might present. I'll add some data sets as we go along also, if you're not interested in the ones that are going to be there already. So we're going to ask you to take one of those data sets. Let's say you're investigating whether or not there's an association between having health insurance and getting a measles vaccine, right? Actually getting a family having health insurance for a baby and actually going to a doctor and getting a measles vaccination. I guess not a baby, right? I think you have to be at least 1 or 2 years old to get the vaccination. So anyway, it's a small child getting a measles vaccination. Or maybe there's some other issue that you could examine similarly, or maybe instead of that, influenza vaccination, something like that. So given that data set, we're going to ask you to say to yourself, well, how am I going to demonstrate whether there's an association or there isn't an association? Are people who have medical insurance, private medical insurance, or so on and so forth, are they more likely to get an influenza vaccination than people who don't have private health insurance? Well, we can examine that. What we're going to ask you to do is to look at the data, decide what kind of statistical tests you need to apply to it. We're going to be talking about, so far we've talked about t-tests, where we compare a data set to a single value, a single sample t-test. One sample, right? The mean of that sample compared to the mean of a known population, right? So you're comparing it to a number. Tonight, we're going to start to discuss comparing something that's probably more common and more likely for you to come across. We're going to compare the means of two samples. So we have population A, population B. We take a sample from both of them, sample of 50 people from population A, 50 from population B. We measure their BMI, and we want to know whether the BMIs are equal or unequal. There's your null hypothesis. So we would ask you to look at them and say, okay, what am I doing? I'm looking at the average BMI compared to the average BMI of this sample. Well, that's a t-test. When you take numerical variables and you compare averages between those two sample averages, you do a t-test, just like we did for a single sample t-test, except there's a little bit more of complication with a two sample test. So we're going to ask you to set up a null hypothesis, tell us in a few sentences what you're trying to demonstrate, then do the analysis, use the correct statistical test, and there'll be other statistical tests we're going to work with. Do the correct statistical test, give us some sort of feedback in terms of what your population looked like. In other words, charts, age, that describe the age, what percentage of them had insurance, what percentage of them got vaccinations, tables, charts, and so on and so forth, to describe the data and your population. Then do your statistical test, tell us the result, tell us whether you can reject your null hypothesis or not, and give us a results and a conclusion. Okay, and then at the very end, what you're going to do is you're going to structure that so that in big print, it's on from say 5 to 10 pages of 8.5 by 11 paper. And we're going to ask you then to take that and to clip it up, use either push pins or something like that to display it on a poster board, each one of us, right? In other words, have a printed version of it, display it on a poster board, and then spend 3 to 5 minutes describing your project to us and your conclusions, okay? And that's what your grade will be based on. And it's really pretty simple. And the hardest part is wrapping your head around what you want to do, doing the analysis correctly, and then preparing it. Also, maybe I think we also ask you to do a little bit of research, maybe come up with 1 or 2 references that you can look for on the various databases that are available to us through the library, community libraries, to PubMed and stuff like that, to see if you can't find an article or 2 that has some relevance to that as well, right? So it's really a pretty simple project. And the way we're going to ask you to do it is that we're going to introduce it tonight. Next week, we're going to ask you to give us a preliminary idea. Which of these databases you think you want to work with? The following week, we're going to ask you to tell us, well, now that you picked out a database you think you're going to work with, what variables are you going to work with? What statistical tests do you plan on applying? And then so that we can keep up with your progress on it so you don't paint yourself into a corner. So that way, when we come to the last day, we're all prepared. We'll wind up getting a good grade on that, right? So 30% are things you should be able to get a pretty good grade on. The exams, I understand they're a little bit more of a crapshoot because you're going to have a bad day. You're going to, forget a few things and stuff like that. But there's also things you can do there as well. If you got a low score on exam 1 and you didn't take advantage of the makeup, you should consider that. Talk to me. I think I believe I already shut it off, but talk to me about it. And again, maybe we'll do something like that on exam 2. I have a few of you that had issues with technical issues with the exam, and I'll address those as well. So I definitely, and there are a couple of people that missed the exam, so I definitely have to do a makeup, but we'll figure something out as well. First exam, you had your score in your first try, and then you had an opportunity to do a makeup, and your final score is going to be the average of those two. So we're probably going to do the same thing maybe on exam 2. But like I said, the homeworks, that project is a long, giant part of your grade, right? So you guys should be able to manage that. In the meantime, look at it from my position. You come up to me and says, Tony, I really need to do makeup on exam 2. And then I look back here, and you've only made one attempt on each of the homeworks. You haven't gone back to try and increase your grade. Do the homeworks. Okay, I will give you a lot of latitude on when you can take the exam, the makeup exam, but I really think it's worth doing the homeworks until you can get them right, because for the most part, the materials on the homework is really what's on the exam as well, right? Few tricky problems here and there, but for the most part, the exams are very similar to the homework. Okay, so I really encourage you to go back and get those homeworks cleared out of the way. And if you're not on Daytona Beach next week with sand between your toes, work on the homeworks. Catch up on those homeworks. Any questions? Okay, you'll see the description if you look on Blackboard now, you'll actually see the descriptions of the final project and the rules and so on and so forth. And if you look at the syllabus, you'll start to see dates where we're asking you to give us some feedback on what you plan on doing. Okay, so where are we now? Tonight we're at February 16th. Tonight, nope, hang on a second. Is that the old version? Did I just mess this up? Yeah, something's missing here. 416. What did I open up here? Well, I messed something up here. Just regression. Okay, tonight we're going to be, there's a problem here. Tonight we're going to be working with two-sided t-tests, right? And we're going to start to discuss this idea of a final project. So tonight we're dealing with two sample t-tests. Oh, now here we go. Concept of parent sample size, calculation of two samples, analysis of variance is going to be next week. Analysis of variance is a statistical analysis you use when you have more than two samples and you're examining numerical variables. You have population A, population B, population C, D, and E, and you want to know if the average BMI for population A is equal to the average for B, C, D, and E. So now you have 5 groups where you're comparing the averages. Well, one way you could do it is to do a t-test between A and B, then do a t-test between B and C, and between D and E. But the only problem there now is you got to go back and do A and C, A and D, A and E, and every time we do a t-test, what's the chances we're going to be wrong? 5%, right? So if you keep repeating t-tests, it's like Russian roulette. You keep playing, you're going to lose, right? So you know that that's not a good way to do that. Analysis of variance is a tool that allows you to compare means when you're dealing with more than 3 samples. So tonight we're going to deal with 2 samples. Next week we're going to deal with 3 samples. The following week we're going to be dealing with contingency tables. That's going to be 5-7. Yeah, this is definitely the wrong version. That's going to be on 5.7. We're going to be dealing with not contingency table, well, contingency tables, yes. We're going to be dealing with chi-square, odd ratio, and relative risk. Sounds like it's three different things. It's really one thing. It's a way for you to determine whether or not there's an association between two categorical variables. For instance, is there an association between being left-handed and let's see, being left-handed and having blue eyes, right? Okay, what do we have there? There's categorical variables. You can't do an average. You're not comparing averages. So you want to know, okay, 100 people. Let's say 30 of them are left-handed, 70 of them are right-handed. Okay, and out of those 100 people, 35 of them have blue eyes, and the rest of them have some other color eyes. Well, how are you going to show that there's an association? There's no association between those two categorical variables. Well, you set up a table called a crosstab. Remember that table we set up for diagnostic tests, where we had the test result, positive or negative, and we had whether the person had the disease or not? Well, you do the same kind of thing, except in this case, you would say on the rows, you would have whether a person in the top row might be people that are left-handed, bottom row are people that are right-handed, and on the columns, people in the left column might be people with blue eyes, and the right-handed column might be people who don't have blue eyes. So the people that are in that upper left-hand box are people who are both left-handed and have blue eyes, and the rest of them are some other combination. So using that table, how can you demonstrate statistically with a certain level of confidence, say 95% certainty, that there's an association between having blue eyes and being left-handed? That's how we use chi-square, odds ratio, and relative risk. It sounds complicated, but it's really mathematically probably one of the simpler things we're going to wind up doing this semester. Finally, on the last session, we're going to look at regression. Now, what about when we're trying to show an association between two numerical variables? How much does a slice of pizza cost? I don't mean like the dollar pizza. I mean like in a real pizzeria. How much does a slice of pizza cost? Yeah. $3, about $2.85. Would you say maybe $2.85, $2.75, right? Somewhere in there, right? $2.50 to $3. How much is a Subway fare? That's about the same thing, right? My whole life, the Subway fare and a slice of pizza cost the same thing. When I first started taking Subway as a kid, it was 15 cents to get on the Subway. It was 15 cents for a slice of pizza. There is a correlation, I think, between the cost of a Subway fare and a slice of pizza, right? So how do you demonstrate that that is a legitimate correlation, that as one goes up, the other one goes up? Now, that's what you would call a specious correlation. In other words, it just happens, right? It doesn't really mean anything, right? There's nothing about a Subway fare that increases the price of pizza, right? But there are many things, such as how much sugar you eat in a day, and what your blood sugar level is, or what your insulin sensitivity might be, right? Those are two numerical variables. You can look at those two numerical variables and see if as one goes up, does the other one go up also? That's a correlation. That's statistically what we call a correlation. And can you demonstrate with a level of statistical certainty that it's real, that it's not due to chance? That's called correlation and regression. In the regression part of it, we actually predict that there's some causality between the two of them, and we try and use one to predict what the other might be. For instance, we might use age to predict insulin sensitivity, right? If you're 40, it's probably down here. If you're 60, it's probably up here, and so on and so forth, right? So we're going to take a look at maybe BMI and insulin sensitivity, whatever, right? So that's the idea. When you go to your project, you're going to look at what kind of data you have, and which one of these tests should I apply. That's why it's so important that, like, over the next week or two, that on Blackboard and discussions forums, you start to post what you propose to do, what data set you're going to use, what variables you're going to use, and what tests you plan on using, so I can take a quick look at it and give you some advice, because a lot of the tests that you may want to apply may be things we haven't gotten to yet. right? Maybe that I can direct you to a little bit of a boost on that, so you can get started with it, right? Or steer you in the right direction at least, anyway. All right, so that's where we stand with that. And the last session is going to be 5/21. Unfortunately, our class and our Tuesday, and the finals week is like Wednesday to Wednesday, Wednesday to Thursday, Wednesday to Wednesday, or something like that. So our last class is on the 21st. That's going to be an evening when we will. I'll get like 5 easels and sets of OTAG. We'll put them up in the front of the room. People will come up, put up their project. And I'll be showing you some examples. As a matter of fact, I think I have one on Blackboard. Now, if I got to warn you that this is a really good one. Okay, I'm not expecting everybody to do quite as much as this, but this will give you an idea of what a really good one looks like. Let me change the view here. How about that? Okay, so here we go. That's one page. You can actually do this in PowerPoint, as a matter of fact. See, this is a full page. So it's very big type, because on the poster you want to be able to, people want to walk past it and read it. Right, here's the background. This is what she plans on doing. Educational intervention to teach non-geriatric healthcare providers, so on and so forth. Here's the background. She provided the background. This is a data sheet that she found and was working on, or he found and was working on. This is the objectives. This is the methods that were used. These are the results. So figure 1 shows the age distribution. It gives us a little bit about what this population looks like, what their age distribution is. Figure 2 shows the distribution by gender. There were a lot more females, and that's because females live longer, right? So it's been a lot easier to find female geriatric subjects. Shows distribution of race and ethnicity in this chart. So she's given a little window on using tables and SPSS or Excel, giving us a window on what her sample population looks like. And some other information. It's got this is very elaborate. You don't necessarily have to go through all it is. Then she did some statistical analysis. Here's a couple of side-by-side box charts, and she's testing to see whether this intervention improved the performance of these workers. Okay, and then finally, here's the discussion. I don't know why it's upside down. Probably got something to do with the way I converted it from PowerPoint or something like that, and so on. So I think, is there a statistical test buried in here somewhere? There might be. Pre, post. Well, at any rate, you would put in your table, your chart, with your t-test or other test, and tell us the results on it. So this is what? This is about 7 or 8 pages. You take each page, put it up on a board, and you would present it. Spend 3 to 5 minutes presenting it. And what are we trying to emulate here? Well, number one, we're trying to get you to do something a little bit independent that causes you to think about how you would apply statistics when you're doing your capstone or something like that, or in your career in the future. And we're also kind of emulating something that actually occurs. How many of you have ever been to a professional organization or a meeting where they had a poster session? A couple of you. Like, what they do is that if you go to the American Public Health Association, has a meeting annually, usually in Washington. If you go to that meeting, there's thousands of people that show up for that. They have speakers on various topics. In this room, this person will be talking about this topic, about their research in this topic. Another room, someone else. And they'll have maybe during the course of the day 10 or 15 or 20 speakers that present to large audiences. However, there's half the people that are there are working on some sort of project or research or something else that they want to present information about and maybe get some feedback on. So they have sessions where they present their research on posters like this. Unlike you guys, they haven't professionally prepared printed, and they display those posters row after row, could be hundreds of them in rows, and other attendees would walk down these rows and see these posters, and occasionally if you see one that you're interested in, you stop, and the person that did that research is usually standing there or in the vicinity, and you can chat with them and find out more about their research, and you can exchange some information. Just to give you an idea of how it might look. There's one. There's a good one. Yep. I don't know if you can get a good look at that. Right? You see rows and rows and rows of posters there. There's what a typical poster might look like. There, and there's people just, stopping by and discussing that research with them. Okay. Now, obviously, you're not going to be as elaborate that, but you're emulating that. That's basically what you're emulating. Okay. Let me put that away for now. We'll be getting back to that, I'm sure, plenty as we move on. Any questions about that? You guys comfortable with that? Anybody freak out at, like if you freak out doing presentations or speaking in front of somebody, you can let me know privately, right? And I'll deal with it. However, I really encourage you to do it because number one, it's your classmates, right? So there's no reason to be concerned about it. Number two, we're not recording it. Nobody will ever know. It's not going to be on YouTube, right? And don't laugh. And number three, it's good practice for public speaking. You guys know who Warren Buffett is? He's like one of the richest people in the country. Right now, he's in a he's worth, I don't know, $75 or $100 billion or something like that. And he and Bill Gates have formed a partnership where they're donating even before they're dead. They're donating half their wealth to. They're going to donate all their wealth, but while they're alive, donating half their combined wealth to various world health projects and so on and so forth. And a lot of people asked him that if you're a young professional, and you want to be successful like he's been, what's the one thing you might do? And he consistently answered the best thing he ever did was he took a course called the Dale Carnegie course. Anybody ever hear of that? Yeah, a few people, right? It's a public speaking course. It's a confidence and public speaking course. So he talks about how it costs $100, and he put up the $100 in cash right away because he knew if he didn't pay for it up front that he wouldn't show up again because he was terrified of speaking in public. Okay, so at any rate, all right, let's get off this topic and get back onto the topic of statistics. All right. Now I'm going to have to do something about this in the background. Do I got any comments on the chat box? No, doesn't look like it. Good. I muted everybody, so that should be good. Okay. Okay, I don't know if you noticed it, but on session 9, it's like week 11, but it's session 9 because of the 2 exams. On this session, I've already made 2 videos available. One of the videos is a visit from one of the people that is involved with the New York City Department of Health in putting together that community health survey. I'm going to play that for you guys. You know, like every once in a while we get her to actually come in here and present. This semester we don't have her, but we have the video that she did the last time. The other thing that's here is a video of Levi giving this same lecture. Okay, so you can always go home and play this. I'm going to go through the slides myself right now. I'm going to go through them very quickly because I want to get to that, and I want to get to the lab work as well, and maybe discuss the exam a bit. So I'm going to go through them very quickly. But if you watch the video, you'll see Levi go through them in much more detail. Okay, so you got his version of it as well.